Hi, my name is Vanita. Today I want to talk to you about the relationship between the food that we eat, our brain, our gut, our highest selves, and the polarization that we're seeing in the world. You know, what makes us human and different from other animals is partially our brain. It's the different parts of our brain and their size and how we use them. And one of the most notable parts of our brain is our prefrontal cortex, which is about roughly there. And in humans, the prefrontal cortex takes up about 33% of our brain. It's about a third of our brain. It's a rough estimate. And, our closest cousins, which are chimpanzees, their prefrontal cortex is only about 17% of their brain. And in other types of animals, it's much smaller than that. So this is an important part. This is an important structure of our brain. And what does the prefrontal cortex do? Well, it has a lot to do with our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to each other. It has a lot to do with empathy and compassion and how we plan for the future, how we make decisions thinking about the future, which is an important part of us envisioning our future and thinking about what it is that we believe and we want to call into our lives. And so what ends up happening is that when we eat certain foods, mostly high sugar or high processed foods, they can lead to inflammation into the body. And this has to do with our gut lining. I think that a lot of you have probably heard of the gut microbiome, and this is the bacteria that reside specifically in our gut. We have bacteria all over our body, and they are, in relationship with us. And the gut bacteria are really important in maintaining the gut lining. They kind of keep this lining around our gut intact. And what happens is when these highly processed, high sugar foods enter into our digestive system often and on a routine basis, there can be the feeding of the bacteria that maybe aren't so beneficial to us, or the fact that they just create an imbalance in the bacteria. So what happens is that the gut lining becomes destroyed, and then food can leak out and toxins can leak out, and they're no longer contained in our gut and they're entering into our bloodstream. And this is causing inflammation in lots of different areas. Well, it's been shown that there's a relationship between this inflammation that's happening and the way we use our prefrontal cortex, this decision-making process, this, how we end up thinking about ourselves and our future and how we relate to one another. And what happens is we're disconnected from our prefrontal cortex. And so we're not as caring. We're not as compassionate. We want quick decisions, because what happens is when we're not using our prefrontal cortex, we use another part of our brain. And this is an older part of our brain called the amygdala. And this is a lot more reactive. It's a lot more fear-based. It wants to have quick decisions, and it wants to have the easiest decision based on the things that we know. It wants to be immediately satisfied, and so to feel comforted. And so we go into this older part of our brain that's more reactive and less thoughtful. And so there are consequences of this. We see that this high sugar, high processed food diet, it was once called the American diet, and now it's been called the Western diet. And sadly, this diet has been exported around the world. I used to see these pictures of what other people eat around the world, and it was all these wonderful grown foods, food from the earth, food that was nourishing to our bodies. And I still believe that there are a lot of people who eat these foods around the world, even including here in America and, in other Western countries. But the problem is that the processed food, high sugar diet has been exported to go across the world. And there's no doubt that when you go into the grocery stores or into the small little convenience stores, bodegas, little roadside stands, you find a lot of sugar, and you find prepackaged goodies like chips and cookies and, whatever else there might be. And these are contributing to, again, this inflammation in the body that then is preventing us from acting from our prefrontal cortex and being able to make decisions that are thinking about our future selves, that are thinking about, being empathetic and compassionate towards ourselves and each other. And so what we can see is that when we have this kind of reactive behavior based on our amygdala, this could be leading to the polarization that we're seeing in the world. I mean, we definitely see a height of polarization here in the US. There's so much me versus you. I'm right, you're wrong. You need to think what I'm thinking in order for us to be friends. There's polarization all around, but we can see this polarization happening across the world. And perhaps this is partially due to the diet and the way we're treating ourselves, because we're not able to access those part of our brain that is the most beneficial for us to be able to relate to one another. So, in addition to this concept of perhaps our diet is affecting the way we behave and operate in the world with each other, and maybe perhaps increasing the polarization that we're seeing, it also is preventing us from seeing and connecting with our highest selves. Our highest selves are the version of ourself in the future. We call them our future selves. But our highest self is this version of ourself that we know that we are calling into our life, that we want to be. It's that version that has seen it all and done it all and knows the mistakes and knows what to do and has just made it and is exactly what we want. They're abundant, they're happy, they're full of energy, they're vibrant, and they can see hope and joy and love. And this is that part that is really that we can get in touch with our prefrontal cortex. So there's a possibility that we are preventing our connection with this highest self, being able to see and envision a future for ourselves that we desire because of our diet, because of our dietary choices. Now, it's not your fault. This is not your fault. It's not your fault that you are choosing processed foods and sugared foods. And I choose processed foods and sugared foods over healthy foods because the food industry has hijacked our biological systems to know what it takes to get us to crave that. More sugar, more salt, more fat, less nutrients. There's a lot of tricks in the book to get us to crave. And it's not from, a craving that occurs here. It's a craving that occurs in our body because they have learned about the evolutionary mechanisms that have been created for us to survive. But the thing is, for most of us, we're really truly not in survival. There's more food available than there has ever been before. We have so much food around us that it's going to waste. And yes, there are people starving around the world. And yes, there are people that need food. But there is an abundance and there is enough to go around. And what has happened is the food industry has hacked this biological system within us that says we like sugar. We need sugar because sugar increases the insulin in our body, which stores fat. And we need fat to get through the winter because winter is when there's times of scarcity. But guess what? We no longer have scarcity in winter. We have grocery stores that are packed full of foods. And so our bodies don't know this. Our bodies haven't evolved to this because it takes thousands and maybe even millions of years for us to evolve, for our systems to evolve. But the food industry can just change something chemically and make us more prone to want that, to crave that, to desire that. And they do it for profit. And so what ends up happening is we make those quick decisions. We're hungry. We want a quick snack. You reach for those chips. You reach for that cookie. Even the healthy varieties, even the healthiest of healthiest, it's packaged food and it's being used in a way that is going to increase you wanting that. And so, while this quick fix might have liberated us to some degree because it's taken us away from the stoves and it's taken us away from meal prep time, it's also increased a lot of our health problems. And so when we look at this holistically, look at this from all angles, and we begin to see that these might be some slave codes that are embedded into us because we become a slave to our biological systems that are asking us to be dependent on this food. Because when you eat it, you want more. And when you have more, you start to become disconnected from your prefrontal cortex and you rely on your amygdala. So you are no longer in connection with each other and with our highest selves. And now you are looking at your amygdala who wants to be reactive and quick and wants to fight and wants to run and wants to make you comfortable. So there is something that we can do. We can change the way we react. We can change the way we act, and we can make better choices for ourselves. And this is partially what I do here at Food Alchemics. We are learning about our relationship to food. Now, I'm not going to give you a diet plan, and I'm not going to tell you what to do. All I'm going to do is to help you awaken your inner knowing, your innate intuition that knows what is right for you and what decisions you should be making. And I'm going to empower you with information that's going to help you so that you can choose what it is that is most in alignment for you. Because we are unique individuals with our unique backgrounds, and we have our own environments and our own different aspects of life that make us who we are. And what works for me may not work for you. And what works for you may not work for your brother or sister, or it may not work for your parents, or it may not work for your friends. We're unique individuals, and we need to find what's right for us because we only know what we can handle. And so I help you with finding your own power and with finding what is right for you by deep diving into this relationship so that we can break free of these slave codes that have us ingrained in keeping us disconnected from ourselves so that we cannot recognize our own power and envision this life that we could have and that we want and that we can call it into us and that is within our power. So if you're interested in anything that I'm saying, I encourage you to follow me here on Food Alchemics. And, let's continue to talk. Drop a comment below if you want to have a conversation with me. Just stay in touch because there's so much we can do. The world needs us right now more than ever. We need to wake up and recognize our own power. And I'm here to help you wake up because we don't need to be slaves to the food that we're eating. We don't need to be slaves to our biological systems. We can work with it. We can do what's necessary to lead our best lives. And so I encourage you today to make one small choice for yourself. When you feel that hunger pang and you want to go for that quick fix, those chips, those cookies, that puffed broccoli sprouts. I mean, you see everything out there. Some of it looks better than others, but it's still packaged and it's still processed and it will still leave you wanting more. So before you reach for that, I encourage you, just have a glass of water. Drink that water, appreciate that water, and try to have a piece of fruit. And then after that, if you want to have something else, if you want it processed, go ahead, have the chips or something afterwards. But just see how you feel after a piece of fruit and a glass of water. Allow your body to accept that nourishment and allow for your body to rewire your brain. Allow that brain to be proud of this kind of new neural decision. And the more you do it, the more you will rewire yourself. The more you rewire yourself, the more you form these new circuits that are in alignment with who you want to be, who you know you are. And the more you'll begin to use your prefrontal cortex and begin to call that highest self into you. So I encourage you, have a glass of water, have a piece of fruit, like this page, follow me, and let's stay in touch. Have a great day. Bye.